Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Game of Thrones Bran Vision video. Just careful for spoilers from episode 6 if you haven't seen it yet. There were a whole bunch of Bran flashbacks that I'm going to talk about, just a bunch of really quick cuts. I totally feel like they couldn't have gotten away with something like that in an age before web viewing where you could rewind really easily. It would have just been completely terrible. But there are a couple big things going on in these flashbacks. Two big phrases that are really important. Where's my sister? And burn them all. So obviously one is the Mad King flashback, Jaime's Kingslayer moment, where the Mad King was getting ready to douse all of King's Landing in wildfire. He'd been driven completely mad and had been pushed over the edge by Robert's rebellion. He'd been steadily going mad for a long time. Daenerys is also a big part of the visions. They use flashbacks from earlier seasons to show Drogon flying high. Then it shows a shadow of a dragon flying over what looks like King's Landing. It's basically Bran getting the information that he needs to fight the Night's King, because we also get a flashback to the Night's King creating another White Walker. We see Hardhome from last season. So Bran is just learning ways to fight the White Walker and some of the important players. It's basically him connecting the dots for us, the audience. Like, oh, Dragon's going to be very important. Jon Snow going to be very important. Wildfire going to be very important. So a lot of people, when they heard that burn them all moment, are like, maybe Bran caused him to go mad and that's why he said burn them all, because Bran was thinking about burning the White Walkers. It's really the other way around, I think. Bran is getting the idea after hearing the Mad King say, burn them all. Oh, burn all the whites, because the vision comes after this big Hardhome scene. No surprise that then after Bran wakes up and the whites have found them, they're getting ready to kill them, Benjen rides in and burns a bunch of whites. So this is just the show beating you in the face with a battle plan. They have a loose plan now. We need to burn them. But it's not like Bran has a bunch of wildfire that he's hauling around, and the dragons haven't made it to Westeros yet. So there's just a couple weapons they need and the people to wield them. So first and foremost, all these visions are about fighting the Night's King and his army, stopping them. But there's also a bunch of other stuff happening here. The reason why we see this big Mad King flashback in this episode is because we're getting ready for a big Jaime episode. And thus far, this event has defined Jaime's life. Of all the great things that he's done, the big battles he's been involved in, the Smiling Knight, his relationship with Cersei, everyone still thinks of him as the Kingslayer. No matter what he's done since then, he's still the Kingslayer. So it's just the show paying that moment off before a big Jaime episode, because we're going to Riverrun, we're going to see the Blackfish. So really defining moment in Jaime's life preceding a big Jaime episode. The Lyanna Stark flashback part of this, the Ned promised me moment from the book where Ned Stark presumably takes the baby Jon Snow. Hopefully they'll confirm that. That's just what everyone believes happened in the book. Lyanna Stark extracted a promise for Ned, but George R.R. Martin never said that he took a baby from the Tower of Joy. It's just that fans have just been pointing to a bunch of book evidence saying, oh yeah, that's probably Jon Snow. He's part of the promise that he made. But Lyanna Stark was a big part of what set off Robert's rebellion in the first place. Like this Mad King flashback was at the tail end of Robert's rebellion. Lyanna Stark was abducted before it started. That kind of precipitated things that led to other things happening that just snowballed into Robert's rebellion. So I know these really quick cut flashbacks were kind of hard to follow, but then in this other Bran flashback from the Hodor episode is Bran watching Rickard Stark leave, presumably to go talk to the Mad King to try and get Lyanna Stark back. So what happened is Rhaegar abducted Lyanna, then Rickard Stark went to the Mad King with Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother. They petitioned the Mad King to try and get Lyanna Stark back, but trial by combat was called, and the Mad King chose fire as his champion. So if you didn't think he was mad before, he's definitely crazy at this point. Rickard Stark gets roasted over fire. Brandon Stark gets his arms tied behind him and ended up choking himself to death trying to reach his sword to save his father, to save Rickard Stark. That was the big tipping point for Robert's rebellion, where Robert was like, oh, shit is on. So he rallied the banners using what happened to Rickard Stark as this catalyst. Like, look, see what he did to this person that you love so much. The Warden of the North, roasted by the Mad King. We need to get rid of him. So he used that to rally people to his cause. Robert's rebellion happens. They are still searching for Lyanna Stark. So at the tail end of it, Ned Stark finds himself at the Tower of Joy. Where's my sister? So even though Ned Stark and bloody Lyanna Stark here don't seem connected to fighting White Walkers, it's just because Jon Snow is going to be a big part of that, and it's also a big part of Robert's rebellion. So the show is paying off the War for the Dawn and Robert's Rebellion. All these things that are talked about by the characters in the novels, but you never actually see because the novels pick up after Robert's Rebellion. So for all the times people complain about stuff that Dan and Dave changed from the books, stuff that they cut out, I think that they're trying to do something really awesome for the fans by doing it this way, because the Three-Eyed Raven basically gave Bran the entire collected knowledge of what happened in Westeros. So like he could flash back to Balerion, to Aegon the Conqueror to learn about Dragonfire. He could learn about Wildfire somewhere else because Wildfire wasn't created by the Mad King. So if he needed to learn how to fight White Walkers, there are so many other points in history that he could have flashed back to. But the show just wants to show you Robert's Rebellion to keep the narrative a little bit tighter and to highlight these other big characters that are currently on the show right now. So they're keeping the show as linear and self-contained as possible, just easier to follow, especially for people that have never read the books. So the good news is we get to see all these awesome flashbacks. I got so excited when we saw this Mad King flashback. But it also means that if we get a spin-off series, it probably won't be this. It's not like they're going to retread all the stuff that they're showing us in flashbacks. I think if they did a spin-off series, they would definitely go with Dunk and Egg or something else. Dunk and Egg is just the leading candidate right now. Like they would choose to do a series that is somewhat familiar, like a lot of the names, the surnames, the houses, the places in Westeros would be familiar all over the world, but the characters would be completely different. So in slightly related news, I know a lot of you are asking about the visions that Daenerys had at the House of the Undying. So there's been big changes between the show and the books. Daenerys has way more visions than we saw play out on screen, and a lot of them have to do with the prophecy of the prince who was promised, seeing her brother Rhaegar Targaryen. The things the TV show Daenerys saw were really potential futures, like she sees her baby with Khal Drogo that ended up dying, so we know that didn't come to pass. We also see the throne room in the Red Keep that looks like it's been destroyed and it's snowing, so she sees a nightmare scenario even though she doesn't totally understand what's going on. It'll make more sense once she gets there. As she gets to Westeros eventually, she'll start to learn about what's going on. Eventually she'll learn about the White Walkers. She'll probably commune with Bran a little bit. I'm hoping for like some Daenerys Bran visions. Like hopefully Bran goes all Three-Eyed Raven on her and gives her visions without her totally understanding it. Like, oh my god, White Walkers, we need to worry about this. We need to worry less about conquering Westeros. I know there's been a lot of talk about Mad Queen Daenerys. That's mostly for fun. The show just wants you to think that she's going to be a villain, this conquering person that's going to fly into Westeros and destroy everyone, until the reversal when she learns about the White Walkers. But hopefully that explains a little about Bran's visions, why they chose those moments to show on screen specifically, where Bran is like a library now. I mean, if Bran really wanted to, he could flash back and look at Aegon the Conqueror and learn about all these same things. Like, oh, I need dragons, I need wildfire. So it's not like Dan and Dave are just spinning a wheel when they're trying to choose which flashbacks to show. Like the Tower of Joy flashback will probably precede some big Jon Snow episode before his army and Ramsay's army have it out. So brace yourself. Oh shit, flashbacks are coming. And I do think that this season will end on a slightly more cheerworthy oh shit moment. Like last season, Jon Snow was dead and all the air just rushed out of the internet. Like everyone's like, oh my god, I don't know what's going on, what's happening. But I think at the end of this season, it'll be somewhat similar, only it'll be a little more positive. Like you'll be screaming because it's really intense and it'll be a cliffhanger, but you'll be excited for the way they're going to pay it off next season. Whereas with Jon Snow, I think it was more confusion just because so many people hadn't read the books or hadn't really read a lot of the Jon Snow resurrection theories. But that's a good question. Let me know, which episode do you think that they're going to finish paying off the Tower of Joy flashback, you know, the baby, like, promise me, Ned, that you'll take care of this baby. And what kind of oh shit moment do you think that we'll end the season on? Like White Walkers marching south of the wall? That would actually be a pretty big oh shit moment that people will get really excited about because it's bad, but it's also really awesome because it's going to be epic. So either way, posting my episode 7 video later tonight. Be sure to subscribe to get it. There's also a new round of the giveaway. It's just a $20 Amazon gift card. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. I'll just remind everyone when I post that episode 7 video. Just as a refresher, if you guys haven't seen it, you can click here to learn all about that Tower of Joy flashback, R plus L equals J, the prophecy of the prince who was promised, which is actually pretty ambiguous. And you can also click here for my episode 6 video from last week. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.